Hello everybody, I'm Avery, and welcome to my Week 5 video of Pika's Awesome Draft League 3. Last week, I was up against Chaos, and after his terrifying Mega Venusaur threatened to completely thwart my offense plan, Iron Moth and Terrapagos were barely able to clutch up, giving us a 2-0 win and bringing us to 2-2. A bit of a better position than being 1-2 like I was going into week 4, but obviously I don't want to keep just like alternating wins and losses. So I'm really trying to win out and just get my record as high as possible so that I can make playoffs. So this week I'm up against Violet, who's the creator of PADL and a really good friend of mine, and also the person who I run mocks against. So this was a bit weird because I had to basically do all of my practice myself. So I ended up doing a lot of self mocks, which I started doing in week 3, but I kind of picked up the amount that I did. I think I did about 80 of them, which is kind of outrageous. But in my defense, when you're playing against yourself, you don't get as much information as you do when playing against another player. So, anyways, I'm yapping. Let's get to the matchup breakdown. So some of the big things in this matchup are Violet's speed control is really good. Thundurus and Meowscarada are really tricky for my team to deal with, like speed-wise. There aren't that many hazard options. It's just Swampert and Meowscarada, and Cyclozar is the only mon that has removal. So, not terrible for me, but again, there are still a lot of setup threats. Primarina, Thundurus, Autotomize, Aegislash. Hell, it could even run Swords Dance, which isn't even that bad because when you stay slower, then you're still in Blade form. So, yeah. The threats. Threat number 1, Aegislash. God, Aegislash's defensive typing is so good into my team, and because it can just stay in shield form with its slow speed and King's Shield, it makes it really hard to break through, because if I want to run setup to be able to break through Aegislash, I'm sacrificing my ability to do something else with that Pokemon, essentially. So, it was like, how much ground do I cede to Aegislash to do what I want to do? Was basically the name of the game. Yeah. So, yeah. Aegislash, big threat. It can wall out my whole team with Substitute and Toxic, or even threaten sweeps with 2 Autotomizes and a Weakness Policy boost. Like, there isn't a lot that I can do against it once it reaches that point, especially if hazards are up. Thanks, voice crack. Threat number 2, Meowscarada. It is faster than literally my entire team. Yep, literally my entire team. And aside from Booster Energy Moth, I don't really have anything that I want that could run Scarf, so it was really tricky to find a way to not just let Meowscarada just click whatever buttons it wants, like Low Kick, Triple Axle, U-Turn. Those 3 moves alone are so good at just keeping the momentum up and threatening out my Pokemon constantly. So, yeah. Meowscarada, really big threat offensively, but it could also lean into a more supporting role and just do a lead set, because it is very difficult for me to stop Meowscarada from getting spikes up, and with Aegislash being such a fantastic spin blocker, it's really hard for me to remove those hazards. So, Meowscarada, really big threat. And the last threat, Buzzwole. Buzzwole's defense is so high that it takes almost nothing from my unboosted attacks, which makes it extremely threatening. Not to mention that it's faster than both Bisharp and Iron Hands, which means that I can't even try and get the jump on it with some coverage. It has to be basically entirely predictions or just taking the hit and trying to muscle through, which is easier said than done. And then, you add in the fact that Buzzwole's typing, Bug Fighting, is actually fantastic into my team, because Bug resists the fighting moves like Drain Punch that Iron Hands wants to use to be able to outlast Buzzwole, and the fighting type resists the knockoffs that Bisharp wants to be going for, which really puts a damper on their progress. And then Buzzwole, yet again, like the opposite of Meowscarada, can slap on a Choice Scarf and be an extremely dangerous late-game cleaner, but it's not exclusive to being late game, because it can just come in and out and just threaten a lot of damage or KOs on my Pokemon. So, really, really big threat into my team. So, what did I bring? Last week, I brought a dedicated lead Bisharp who did his best Iron Treads impression with Steel Beam and Stealth Rock, and a Low Sweep, which is kind of like the opposite of Rapid Spin, except for the hazard removal stuff, which is kind of half of what Rapid Spin is good for. Anyways, this week I'm bringing dedicated lead Bisharp, but a little bit differently, because I am Choice Band Adamant 252. I am trying to punch holds as quickly as possible. Dark Steel on the surface doesn't seem to have an incredible type matchup, but because you can hit those Pokemon like Swampert, Primarina, Entei, Meowscarada, Thundurus so hard with like your stabs like neutrally, it actually is fantastic in this matchup with a Choice Band. And then you also throw in the fact that you can use those Banded Pursuits to trap Aegislash, and Aegislash can't even escape it by trying to drop your attack with King's Shield because you have that Defiant. So Bisharp, absolutely fantastic in this matchup. Bisharp's ability to remove items and get damage on Pokemon like Swampert, Primarina, and Entei is really big for enabling Iron Moth in this matchup. With a booster energy and speed, I'm faster than almost everything except for a Scarf Thundurus or a Scarf Meowscarada. Scarf Meowscarada being very unlikely to come in this matchup. So I really liked Iron Moth's matchup on the surface. I'm physically defensive with 20 HP and 248 defense, so I can live a Terra Normal Choice Band Entei Extreme Speed after Stealth Rock, which is an insane calc. I did not know that Iron Moth could do that, but it is really, really good, because that lets me keep my momentum up and chain kills. So, yeah. Fiery Dance, Sludge Wave, and Energy Ball were basically a given here. I messed around with like Psychic over Energy Ball, but the fact that I couldn't always ensure that I chipped Swampert in range of Psychic meant that it was just more consistent to just run Energy Ball just to lock that up. I went real back and forth with the last move slot on Iron Moth. I originally had Toxic Spikes, but then I liked Morning Sun for the ability to dodge Meowscarada Sucker and win 1v1s against Muck if I'm lucky. And then I was messing around with Agility so that I could outspeed a Scarf Terra Ground Thundurus, which can always revenge kill Iron Moth. But I eventually settled on Substitute because it was just a nice move to just force, like, if I can force a Pokemon to switch out and then get a Substitute, then I can chain kills a lot easier. So, yeah, that's really nice. Though, Iron Moth's Kryptonite is Muck. Even with Psychic, it's not a consistent kill, it's not a consistent 1v1 on Muck, unless I get a lot of chip on it. So, my Muck counter, I guess, in this matchup is Mismagius. I have a Colbur Berry just so that knockoff from Muck does as little as possible. Terra Ground, which is kind of weird, but against Nasty Plot, Thunderbolt, Terra Blast Ground, Sludge Bomb, Thundurus, I can Terra Ground and then Destiny Bond, and essentially just, like, force Thundurus to slow down, because Thunderbolt, I get completely blanked. Terra Blast Ground, I have Levitate. Sludge Bomb doesn't do much, and then I can just click Toxic. And Nightshade, which is my main way of chipping down Violet's entire team. I'm EV'd to outspeed Entei, and I believe the EVs take an offensive Meowscarada triple axle from full or after Stealth Rock. The special defense investment is so that I can live a +2 Timid Thundurus Thunderbolt after Stealth Rock. No, not after Stealth Rock, from full. I have Nightshade because it does a lot more damage than Shadow Ball to Pokemon like Muck and Assault Vest Entei, which is really good for chipping them in range of Iron Moth. Taunt, which stops Pokemon like Swampert from setting up Stealth Rock. Toxic, to chip down Pokemon like Entei, because Thunder Wave doesn't help much since Iron Moth is already faster, and Will-O-Wisp doesn't matter unless Entei's a normal type, which it won't always be. And Destiny Bond is so that I can force trades against slower Pokemon, or faster Pokemon if I'm in the right position. My next Pokemon is Terapagos. I am boost with Spin in this matchup, just because if there is no Aegislash, then Terapagos spins for free against almost everything with Terra Shell intact. I'm pretty offensive, 240 Modest. I believe the EVs help me live Thundurus hits better. And the speed, I believe, lets me outspeed Masquerada after a rapid spin. I have Terra Starstorm because it's an insanely powerful move. Scorching Sands, so that if there is an Aegis Slash, I can try and burn it to help Terapagos try and win the 1v1. Rapid Spin, just for the hazard removal and the speed boost, which I can use to threaten a lot of damage on Pokemon. And Stealth Rock, which is useful for getting chip on Pokemon like Assault Vest Entei and Muck. Now, my goal with Iron Moth and Terapagos, with Iron Moth, Bisharp, and Terapagos spreading all of this damage, is to try and win with Iron Hands, which is easier said than done because Violet's speed and type coverage is so good that regardless of what type I terrestrialize into, he's able to just win against Iron Hands 1v1, even through Drain Punch recovery. So, I am Booster Energy here instead of something like Leftovers or Citrus Berry. I was originally Terrifier with Citrus, but the ground weakness and the water weakness were so bad that I decided that being more vulnerable to Sacred Fire was better than being so vulnerable to everything else. And Dragon's honestly a good type. It resists Electric and Grass from Thundurus, which is really nice. And doesn't take much from ground moves because of Iron Hands' sheer bulk. I'm EV'd to outspeed a sassy 31 IV Aegis Slash, and I just have Thunder Punch, Drain Punch, Fire Punch, Swords Dance. The Fire Punch is just so that I can have a stronger hit against Buzzwole. Unfortunately, without Terrifier, I don't kill it at +2, but I still put out so much damage that it could help with something like an Iron Moth endgame, or if Buzzwole is chipped earlier, it can just pick it off. But obviously, against these faster Pokemon that are threatening to Iron Hands' attempts at cleaning up an endgame, it's really difficult to get that to successfully work. So, I have the facilitator here, Citrus Berry, Trick Room, Screamtail. Trick Room was something that I didn't realize was so good until like the very end of my prep, I'd say. It was probably about a bit over the halfway point where I realized, wait a second, Trick Room could be really good here. I originally tried to go hard Trick Room with Rhydon, Min Speed, Iron Hands, but Aegis Slash was just so terrible. Aegis Slash was so good at just completely stalling out Trick Room. And then forcing a sack and then revenge killing, that I decided that it wasn't worth it to go hard Trick Room, and it was better to use Screamtail and Iron Hands to be able to clean up a matchup. So, I'm physically defensive. I believe it allows me to take 2 triple axles from Masquerada. Special attack investment is so that I can always 2-hit KO Buzzwole with Dazzling Gleam, and the rest I put into special defense. I have both Dazzling Gleam and Misty Explosion. Dazzling Gleam so that if I get taunted by a lead Masquerada, I don't have to explode. Misty Explosion so I can gain momentum in Trick Room against Pokemon that Screamtail is naturally slower than, because I'd become faster in Trick Room. And Baton Pass, which is really nice because Screamtail's speed is high enough naturally to the point where if I Trick Room against something that Screamtail is normally faster than, I can then get a slow Baton Pass out. So, yeah. Screamtail here is trying to enable an Iron Hands endgame, and can even enable Bisharp if Bisharp is alive by the endgame, because those Choice Banded knockoffs start to hurt when it starts to do a lot to the resists, especially when they've been chipped. So, yeah, that's my team going into Week 5. Let's get on to the match. Going into team preview, the first things that I notice are that Thundurus is Terra Grass, and that there is no Aegis Slash, which counterintuitively is really big for my Bisharp, because that can mean that Bisharp can just sacrifice himself to get chip on Pokemon instead of having to worry about Pursuit trapping Aegis Slash. So, I feel really good about this matchup, and I just lead off with Bisharp because that's my dedicated lead in this matchup, and even if it's lead low kick spikes Masquerada, this is my play. Violet leads off with Swampert, which does make sense because aside from Masquerada, this is the only other Pokemon that can set up hazards, which is really good for me since I am Choice Band Bisharp, and I just knock off for 80, which means that this Mon cannot check Iron Moth, and as expected, Swampert's Rindo Berry is also just gone, so Iron Moth yet again gets opened up more, but I do have to be careful because if it is Assault Vest Entei, it can just Stomping Tantrum my Iron Moth and just stop Iron Moth from being able to put in as much work as it's capable of. So it's not like immediately over from knocking off Swampert. Swampert sets up rocks, which does make sense. I am EV'd to live an Earthquake with Bisharp from no attack Swampert, so yeah, I just go 2-hit KO Swampert with knockoff, and Entei comes in. I didn't know what this Entei was, and I didn't really have a switch because I wanted to save Screamtails. The Screamtail looked good defensively in this matchup against something like Cyclizar. I could have gone into Terapagos here and just clicked Rapid Spin, but instead I went into Mismagius, which wasn't the best play because Sacred Fire does so much damage. I was expecting a defensive Entei. This is just adamant 252. I was so shocked that I thought this was like charcoal damage on Entei. But because I didn't get the burn, I very luckily am still alive with Mismagius. I threatened the Destiny Bond removal, and I just Toxic Primarina, which is really good for if it's Calm Mind. Yet again, Destiny Bond just to force a trade, as we're kind of in the song and dance of Toxic Destiny Bond, Toxic Destiny Bond. I unfortunately didn't make the play of double toxicking ever. Instead, I just go for Nightshade, as I do get a bit of chip on Meowscarada, which is nice, but no Destiny Bond means that Mismagius goes down with very little fanfare. Cyclizar comes in now, and I bring in my Terapagos. I had not prepped for Cyclizar at all, so I stupidly thought that I could just set up Stealth Rock here, and that Terapagos couldn't spin. Instead, I just take damage on my Terapagos and I end up being slower, because if I had Rapid Spun immediately, Cyclizar might have switched out or might have U-turned out instead, and then I could have gotten rocks. But instead, I'm just stuck with being slower here, as I Terra Starstorm, which doesn't kill because it's Assault Vest Cyclizar. But this turn, I don't call the U-turn. I basically just say, okay, if Terapagos dies, then I bring in my Screamtail and I set up Trick Room, and I go into my Iron Hands. So I just go for a Stealth Rock, and if Cyclizar decides to switch out to save its life, then I get my Stealth Rock up. So Stealth Rock goes up, which is really good, and more toxic damage on Primarina is fantastic, as I just eat away at all of the health on Violet's team. So yet again, Cyclizar comes out here. I just go Bisharp here. I could have clicked Pursuit, but instead I just clicked Sucker, because if it's Overheat or something, it can OHKO my Bisharp. But I'm Choice Band, so Primarina is in range of Choice Band Sucker, which is kind of outrageous, and Entei comes in. Entei is Boots, which is huge. If it was Assault Vest, then Iron Moth still has more work to be done, but Boots means that it's go time. I just Sucker Punch as Entei kills my Bisharp, which is totally fine, because now Iron Moth is online and ready to go. Extreme Speed doesn't do much, and Iron Moth gets kill number 1. Cyclizar comes in here, and I did a bit of a bad play here. If I had recognized that Cyclizar could switch out trying to get Regenerator Chip, I should have clicked Substitute this turn. Instead, I just go for the Sludge Wave because I just wanted to put my foot on the gas, and I kill Meowscarada. Cyclizar comes in again, a bit healthier, and here I thought that Violet was going to sack Thundurus for the Cyclizar again, but that's a dumb play that she wouldn't do, so I don't know what I was clicking here. I go for Substitute, and because of my investment, Rapid Spin doesn't break it, but that really achieved absolutely nothing for me. And Sludge Wave crits. This crit is actually not fantastic. It's like good in the sense that I get damage on Thundurus, but it also makes things a lot scarier because it opens up a lose condition for me. That lose condition being Taunt, Nasty Plot, Thunderbolt, Focus Blast, Thundurus, which can stop my Screamtail from setting up Trick Room, OHKO my hands regardless of Terra, and take very little from Screamtail's damage initially. So, kind of a double-edged sword. The crit is nice, because I already said this. I was so used to practicing against Terra Ground Thundurus that I forgot that I could just click Sludge Wave here since it was Terra Grass and not Terra Ground. So I go for Fiery Dance here, which does mean that I get less chip on Thundurus than I would have liked, as Thunderbolt comes out and kills my Moth. This turn, Thundurus did not use Nasty Plot, which means that my play should always be to go into Iron Hands here and Terra Dragon, because I take any hit and I'm able to kill it with a booster attack Fire Punch. Instead, I was so tunnel visioned that I just decided to go into Scream Tail and try and set up Trick Room, which yet again opened me up to that Taunt Nasty Plot win condition. So I played this endgame really sloppily, but it doesn't actually end up mattering because it wasn't Taunt Thundurus, which means I can just Misty. I could have Dazzling Gleamed into Misty to try and get a kill with Scream Tail, but Iron Hands in Trick Room is always going to seal this game up, as a Drain Punch just comes out and finishes this game. So, a 1-0 win, which is nice. Not the best played 1-0 win, though, because I had a lot of moments where I definitely could have played better or recognized what Violet was trying to do. Instead, I just stuck way too hard to my lines, and I didn't actually play this game as well as I could have. So, you know, good. I'm happy to be 3-2, but obviously I think there's still more work to be done. So, yeah, that's all I have for this video. So, thank you all for watching, and peace.